We're now live.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Hello there. Welcome everybody for the first meeting of this new municipal year. After look at it at the environment and infrastructure decision session. I've got a script to read out initially. During the COVID-19 pandemic, virtual decision sessions of the cabinet portfolios are taking place. May I remind everybody present that the meeting will be broadcast live via the internet and the record will be archived for future viewing. The participants in this meeting will be the councillors concerned, the officers advising me, and those who have requested to make a deputation. May I remind officers and members participating that during the meeting, all participants are in control of their own microphones, which must remain on mute until you are invited. For people, I won't ask them to sign in, but the councillors at this meeting will be Councillor Tim Hodson, Councillor Catherine Thomas, and Councillor David Cole. Thank you. We now turn to the agenda itself. Apologies for absence. There's no apologies.
None received, Cabinet.
And I'm aware there are two deputations. Can you just explain them, please, Joe?
So we've got two deputations from Councillor Clements and Councillor Laura McCarthy in relation to the only substantive item, which are the speed limits in Solihull. Okay, thank you. And I've already asked a question as to who asked first. Generally, if there's two different items, we just go to the main item. But I believe Councillor Clements requested first. So I will allow those deputations shortly. I've just been asked, again, this is so late in the day, Catherine, can I suggest we split the report into non-schools and schools to allow us to comment on it for every time? The answer to that is no. We probably should have asked that a long time earlier, not after the start of the meeting. Can I ask, do you want to do this, Paul? Do you want to ask the deputations first? It probably would be easier.
Thank you. It's probably easy first, and I can cover the points in the presentation.
Yeah, Catherine, you have your hand
up. Yeah, sorry. I don't know. Did you do declarations of interest? Sorry if I missed it.
Oh, sorry. Yes, declarations of interest. I did miss it. Yes.
Yeah. I just want to declare that I work for a manufacturer of automotive autonomous connected vehicles.
Okay, thank you. That's noted. Sorry, Paul. Did you say you have the deputations first? Yes.
Yes, Cameron. Let's take the deputation first. I'll pick up any questions then within the presentation.
So we'll have this order: Councillor Clements, Councillor McCarthy, and then I've got a few words to say on behalf of Councillor Ribeiro. Councillor Clements.
Hi, thank you, Cabinet Member, for allowing me to make representations this evening. So I've been campaigning in Armsden Ward for almost 2 years, and many issues have come up regarding speeding vehicles and the fear of them. I'm aware from previous meetings that officers are looking at Damson Lane and the Rowood Drive area in relation to road safety, and I wondered if roads in this area might be considered to be included in these measures or in the future. In particular, the area on Rowood Drive by the shops and the area around the entrance to Damson Wood Infant School on Stockwell Rise. I also note that Damson Parkway and the proposal of reducing the speed limit from 40 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour is recommended as no further action at this time. However, could this be earmarked for a future review, as this area could be impacted by proposed future development on Lugtrout Lane and Field Lane as outlined in the local plan? The main point though that I wish to raise is the Ventnor Road area, which is used by drivers as a shortcut from Valley Road onto Old Load Lane, and speeding vehicles is a concern to residents and pedestrians using this road as well. So it was a recurring theme that was highlighted to me by residents during the recent local elections, that as it is used as a major pedestrian route to Valley Primary School, both infants and junior sites, they have serious safety concerns, and I ask that this road, as well as the short section of Hatchford Brook Road, be considered for inclusion in the 20-mile-per-hour school street sites as mentioned in Appendix D of the report before you this evening. In addition, with the planned review of highway safety in Rangoon Road and Valley Road taking place in the near future, I feel that adding to the recommendations in relation to the Valley Primary School sites would complement the measures also recommended for Fallowfield Road. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, that's Councillor Clements. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you very much for that, Cabinet Member. I would just like to start by saying thank you very much for allowing me to give this deputation this evening on agenda item 4, speed limits in Solihull. I'd like to thank council officers for their hard work on this and for proposing Fallowfield Road in the list of roads to be considered for a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. I'd also like to ask that consideration is given towards reducing the speed limit on other roads in Elmdon as well, including Ventnor Road, Valley Road, and particularly Rowood Drive, lowering this to 20 miles per hour too. Rowood Drive in particular has had a number of non-fatal collisions in recent years, including incidents where pedestrians have almost been hit by speeding cars losing control on the bends. Cars have been hit and damaged on several occasions. I would like to thank the council officers for undertaking speed monitoring in person in 2019 and for the temporary speed visors erected in 2020. However, speeding is still an ongoing concern on this road. Rowood Drive is an area with many young families who walk to the 3 schools in the area: Coppice Junior School just off Damson Lane at the top of Rowood Drive, Lode Heath School at the bottom of Rowood Drive, and Damson Wood Infant School and a small cul-de-sac on Rowood Drive itself. At school times, there are a high number of children walking down this road, yet cars still exceed the speed limit. Due to the proximity of the schools and the ongoing history of speeding on this road, Councillor Long and I would like to request that a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit is implemented along the length of the road to reduce the risk to other road users and pedestrians. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McCarthy. And then I just want to read out. I'm sorry, Paul. I just want to read out what.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I'll just check on. Sorry, Councillor. Just check on Councillor McCarthy. She was talking about the whole length of Rowood Drive at that point when she summed up. I just did I hear that?
That's how I understood it. Yes.
Yes, the whole length
Okay.
of the drive, yeah, due to the top, middle, and bottom. Thank you.
You're on mute.
I'll keep going in and out. Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Ribeiro has asked me to read this. He's supportive of the 20-mile-an-hour for Noel Ward as per the report, but please include St John's Close so that the triangulation zone, I've made a new word, is at the same speed limit. Not only sensible, but avoids a number of speed signs of 20 and 30 mile an hour entering and exiting St John's Close. And then I looked again at the report. Happy with Warwick Road on the M42 roundabout approaching Knoll, reducing to 30 miles per hour. And then there is a short comment from a resident via Councillor Diana Hall-Allen as the extension from Hampton Road to Crab Mill Close Junction. I think that is served by speed humps, but if we just make note of that and make a note of that as far as representation is concerned. Thank you. I'll ask before I ask Paul Toby to introduce the report. I do, and thank you for the councillors for mentioning this. I do really welcome this report as somebody who's I've taken road safety seriously in my professional career as a traffic motorcyclist and road accident. We call them accidents then, investigator. And I've seen enough fatal and serious injury collisions to last several lifetimes. And I know that one of the biggest causes of these collisions is carelessness, but speed also plays an important part in that. And so I really welcome this report coming through, and also I welcome the comments from the scrutiny board early on this year. So Paul Toby.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Yes, the report before you tonight is really in two parts. It pulls together the review of the speed limits around the network and also a review of the 20-mile-an-hour policy that the council needs to consider. So why are we doing this? Because it's a statutory duty of a competent highway authority. We're required to review our speed limits as set out in the Traffic Management Act. We last did this back in 2010 when we did quite a holistic review of the speed limits on the network, and that took us 5 years to deliver the changes. So it's been 6 years since there were some serious changes on the network, and we feel it's about time now. It has been complicated a little bit with the impact on the network of COVID, but we believe we've been able to have a step back and look at this network, because it's not about individual requests. We've brought them all together and we've considered that across the whole of the network, which is set out in Appendix A for you, and that shows you the current speed limits as they are today. And that doesn't deal with the part-time limits around school. It's the main speed limit that applies during the normal time outside school times. So why are we doing it? Well, I think it's fair to say it's one of the largest items in council officers' postbags. I'm sure it's in members' postbags, the issues around speeding and speed limits. We have a number of requests, and this report pulls together those requests we've had probably over the last 4 years or so that we haven't brought down speed forwards. And there's quite a few, as you'll see, listed in Appendix B. We've tried to give you both a table form and we've given you a plan showing roughly the location and how that will impact on the network with those recommended changes. The speed limits themselves and the process is tightly managed by the Department of Transport, so we have a degree of consistency across the network across England. This is covered in Local Transport No. 1 2013, and there's some key messages in there that speed limits really aren't set to resolve individual hazards and warnings. So we don't just change speeds to deal with bends or junctions. We look at lengths of roads and the characteristics of those roads to make sure that they're self-informing to motorists. And there's good typical examples of those. Typical residential built-up area, street lit, automatically 30. You go out into rural environments and you'll see roads there that are subject to higher speed limits of 50 and 60. And it's some of those roads in the middle that we see that change, where we start seeing development grow, and that spreads out. And we're going to see more of that in the coming years with the link to the local development plan as our urban environment grows. And a number of these are related to those sort of changes. As I said, when we set out, we've also had a high number of requests for 20-mile-an-hour speed limits over the years. And you may recall earlier last year, we implemented 2 as part of our active travel schemes out at Meriden and Knowle. And they're still operating at the moment in temporary arrangements, and they're picked up in this report. Look at them as making them permanent measures. Both have had very positive feedback. I think I'll probably suggest that we won't go through each individual line in the report, because I think we'll be here till tomorrow if we go through. What I'd like to do, Cabinet members, suggest if members wanted to have a conversation about any of the particular proposals, happy to answer those questions when we get to that point. I would like to and then go on to the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. At this stage, we're looking at a policy for 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. We're not looking to make changes for 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. That, as the report sets out, is a much bigger task than we've got available resources at the moment. If you're comfortable with the policy that we set out, and it does focus around our village centres and our schools, which are well supported from the feedback we get at the moment, there's quite a few locations out there that need to be considered. What we'll do is take that list away, prioritise them around the transport priorities that we've got at the moment in the portfolio, and then come back with a funded plan and a programme of which ones we come first. And that's the plan over the 20-mile limits. We have broken down Appendix B and C into groups of the types of speed limit changes. And at the end of that report, you'll see that there's several of them that have picked up where we're recommending no change at this stage as well. So that final column there just recommends the action. If I could just come back on the individual councillors' responses for you at some of the points they raised. The request around infant schools from Councillor Clements on Rowood Drive, yes, we'll certainly look at not only the close that it's on, but the limit around it, and certainly be picking up the impact on Rowood Drive. I noticed Councillor MacArthur picked up the whole length, but I think from a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, we're more focused around school. But again, at this stage, we're not looking for approval to do those. We'll come back to the detail, and we'll certainly involve ward members when we get into the detail of the individual sites, just to make sure we get the local input as well, as we do with our normal traffic regulation order process, because these are all supported by traffic regulation orders. The other request from Councillor Clements was around the Benton Road, Hatchwood Brook Road and Valley Road Primary School. Again, the school will be picked up in that next level of detail at 20-mile limits. But Benton Road and Hatchwood Road to some degree will be linked to the piece of work that we've also agreed that we'll be doing later this year. We'll come back to Cabinet around the low traffic neighbourhoods. And I think the Valley Road and those roads that adjoin Valley Road probably best picked up as part of that piece of work.
Yeah.
And it may be that we come forward with speed limit changes as part of that at the moment. Councillor McCarthy asked for a look at Rowood Drive along its whole length. Happy to consider the whole length by all means, and we are familiar with the damage, only injuries, accidents that have gone on that road. But it clearly is a built-up street lit urban environment at the moment. 30-mile-an-hour is relevant, and some of the sections are fairly straight and good visibility. So you wouldn't necessarily need to have a 20-mile-an-hour limit because it wouldn't meet the proposed criteria that we have in there, where we've got high numbers of people or vulnerable road users crossing the road. We've got the shopping centre near the school, so I say that localised centre there may be something we can look at. But I will take those away and have a look at them in more detail when we come back with that 20-mile-an-hour study later on next year. We recommended. As far as Councillor Ribeiro's points on Knoll are concerned, the report actually picks that up, that we would pick up the detail around Knoll Village. That includes the High Street, Station Road, Lodge Road and St John Close. She's quite right, the triangle in the middle. It does make sense. We don't certainly want silly 30-mile-an-hour signs up when we can cover those roads more efficiently. And again, the characteristics of St John's Close meets the 20-mile-an-hour limit as well. I also picked up at the end the Hampton Road to Crabmill Close. We'll have a look at the terminal points, and again, we'll involve board members in terms of that little point of detail, but I'm sure we can accommodate that request as well. I'll pause at that point and happy to take questions about the first tranche of speed limits, which is set out in Appendix B and C, if you prefer.
Okay, thank you, Paul. It's I'm having gone through the report. Like I've said, I've already said I welcome them. I do feel that they are proportional. Is it important? I mean, he mentions this as well for everything. We hear feedback from the stakeholders in due course, and it's also and perhaps Rowood Drive comes under this, plus lots of other roads. And I'm not going to pick on any one employer, but at certain times of the day, the perception, well, it's not just a perception of speed is more at certain times of the day, and so we need to capture that. I've asked, I'm sorry, Councillor Thomas, that Councillor Hodson got in first, so Councillor Hodson, and then Councillor Thomas.
Thanks very much, Cabinet Member. And just really to start off, I'm really pleased to see this report this evening. I've been in favour of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits for a very long time, particularly on our non-trunk routes. So it's really good to see what's in this report. We know from evidence that when we do reduce speed limits down to 20, particularly on residential roads, we do see a reduction in speeds, and that's acknowledged in the report. And it does also create a safer environment for pedestrians and for cyclists as well. And I think, you know, anything we can do to help with our active travel agenda is absolutely something we should support. So just some comments, so if I could, on I'll leave Appendix D until the next part of the report, as Paul has mentioned, but I just had some comments on some of the individual proposals. So, and Cabinet Member will know this area very well, Reynolds Lane. So looking at what's proposed here, it breaks it up into basically two sections. One would be 30 and then the rest 40. And to me, that doesn't make an awful lot of sense. My view is we should just do 30 the whole length of that road. It's actually a road where speeding is an issue throughout, not just on the section between Stratford Road and the first entrance onto Cheswick Way. And the objective stated in the report is to reduce the approach speeds onto Watery Lane Junction. And if you've got then if you're travelling down, let's say from Stratford Road towards Watery Lane, that the speed limit will change to 40 on a downhill trajectory as well. So I just feel that that is something we should reconsider and just put it as a fully 30 mile an hour limit throughout the whole of that road. The other, Dog Kennel Lane, that was another one picked up where it's not proposed at the moment to reduce that to 30. Speaking to the Shirley South councillors, they have highlighted a concern about a development on the corner with next to the Toyota garage. There's some flats that are being built, and there was a concern about inadequate car parking there, which could spill out onto the main road. So the local councillors have just asked if that could be looked at again. And another one on the list was Lady Lane, where it's not again proposed to reduce that down to 30. And I mean, I've walked up there very often during the lockdowns. It's very near to where I live, and to be honest, it's not very safe for pedestrians and cyclists at 30 miles an hour. And certainly I haven't always felt safe walking down there as a pedestrian. So although it is in a more rural setting, I do think that should be looked at again for a 30 mile an hour speed limit. And just also to say that, the Stratford Road corridor, happy to see that down on paper, and there is the potential there for a 20 mile an hour zone to be considered as part of that ongoing work with that corridor. I think I'll leave it at that, other than to say, I know it's acknowledged in the report about the low traffic neighbourhoods that are being considered, and there's a further report coming back on that. So I know Stanway Road, as well as the roads in Elmdon that have been discussed previously, are coming back, I think, later in the year for consideration. So it's just to say, look forward to seeing that. I do have a comment on Appendix D, but I'll save that until we get to that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Okay, more a question from me actually. I think we obviously have, when it comes to all things traffic related, quite a demand for services, and there's always a bit of a bun fight for which schemes get the available cash, be it zebra crossings, line markings, traffic calming, etc., etc., etc. Now, obviously, doing these speed change reviews is going to cost about £55,000. Now, please exclude the village centres from these comments, because I think I see those very separately and I see a lot of sense in those. But I cross-referenced most of these speed limit changes against our route accident black spots or route issues, and I think there was one that comes in Warwick Road at number 22. Old Damson Lane comes in at number 46, and Box Trees Road comes in at number 56. And I suppose my question really is, why are we doing, generally the focus for all the other traffic related items is spending the money where it's going to do the maximum benefit to address accidents and so on, but yet this is something that doesn't seem to be subject to that same level of scrutiny or that same level of needing to hit those statistics. Could you just explain why this is different to the standard traffic, I suppose, prioritization or focus on those routes that have the highest accident rates?
Okay, thank you. And then I've got Councillor Cole wants to speak now, and then I'll let Paul in.
Want me to come in first? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Fully supportive of the speed reduction. Good thing that we're doing it, because our children are very precious. In the north of the borough, we've got a lot of traffic calming measures everywhere, right across the borough, and they're quite good outside the schools, all except for one. And that one is Grace Academy on Chapel House Road, but I know that something's going to be done about that. But again, as I say, in the north of the borough, I'm quite pleased that we do have a lot of traffic calming issues, in the area, and where we haven't got them, the traffic can't get above 15 mile an hour in any case, as Paul knows. So yeah, fully supportive of this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Thank you, councillors. Hope I capture everything, but please let me know if I haven't points raised. Councillor Hodgson, happy to go away and have another look at Crenells Lane, but I would point out that certainly the first section from the Stratford Road is, I'd call it semi-urban. It is only built up in patches. And I do believe what the team, when they looked at this, felt that you'd lose the impact of having the 30-mile-an-hour signs at the Stratford Road. We feel it'd be much better to have an impact before you get to the main village, when you start to see the houses, which are actually only built up on the right-hand side as you're going towards Cheswick Green. And that is the message in the Department of Transport advices are about. It's meant to be self-explaining to the motorists that approach it. So once they start to see that residential environment coming into the village, that's when they start to think about changing it to a 30-mile limit. And I think that was the thinking behind the officers, but happy to take it away and have another look for you. And I say, once we get into the detail of advertising the traffic regulation orders, the ward members will be able to help us shape that final proposal. That was the thinking behind that one. Dog Kennel Lane, I think the report does allude to the fact that Dog Kennel Lane is very semi-rural at the moment. In fact, you could argue it's rural for most of it. As a motorist goes down Dog Kennel Lane, you see very little evidence of built-up property. They are well set back, and there is only 3 accesses, I think, onto 3 or 4 accesses onto Dog Kennel Lane. So that's why the recommendation at the moment is to leave it at 30 miles an hour. However, as you know, the local development plan is going to have a significant impact on that particular street, and we think that the appropriate time to review that is when those proposals come forward, and we'll look to certainly look at the speed limit of that road, because it certainly will change the characteristics there. Lady Lane, again, I'll take it away and have another look just to make sure we haven't missed anything there. But again, apart from that little top section, it's a very rural environment, as you alluded to yourself, although it has got a few people that walk down to the canal and the canal shop down the bottom there. So I'm sure that's where you're off to the CAF, or maybe off to the country walks through there. So let's go away and have a look at it. But I think on balance, you've got to be fair to the motorist as well. And would they really be looking at driving 30 miles an hour down there? And one step I failed to explain in the process is the council doesn't enforce speed limits. That's a responsibility of the police. And as part of the statutory process, we do have to involve the police in that next level of consultation. And I'm not sure the police would be supportive of doing a 30-mile-an-hour in isolation in such a location there. But happy to take it away and get a further look on it. Thanks for your comments on the A34. I think that's going to be really linked with that work that's going on the Shirley economic plan and trying to regenerate Shirley and do a similar sort of measure in the heart of Shirley around 20 miles an hour. So there's certainly a lot of support for that measure going forward. So thank you for your support for that. Councillor Thomas, a quick nod from Councillor Hodgson. Did I cover all your points?
Sorry, can I just reply? Yes, you did, Paul. I just wanted to point out, though, on Crenells Lane, if you look at the map that you put into the papers, let's see, it's on page, I think it's page 20 or 21. It's that big map that that folds out, I think, to A3. If you look at where the 30-mile-an-hour limit would be, it would be from Stratford Road to the first junction with Cheswick Way. So if you look at the map, it's coloured in yellow.
Oh, it is.
From the top to the first entrance.
I think it doesn't match up with the description, does it? So we need to have a look at that for you.
So I suppose that just needs to be ironed out. But yeah, I do still think I'd like to see the whole length of it changed, personally. Thanks.
Happy to take that away. Thank you. Councillor Thomas, I think you raised the question about why we're doing this sort of best value for money. Hopefully this answers your question, and I've given this a little bit of thought while I've been thinking about it. We're required to do it. So as a competent highway authority, we're required to do speed limit reviews regularly. Last year, Cabinet Member was presented with a report around resources and priorities that sets out the priorities for the 2 types of funding that the council receives. So the first type is capital funding through the local transport plan. The second element is revenue funding, that's generally for maintenance and upkeep and repair. So setting aside the revenue funding, because this is new work, so it wouldn't be appropriate for revenue funding, We get a capital allocation through of around about £250,000, I think, this year, that we've set aside for doing traffic management activities. And through that funding, we put a proportion towards road safety measures, we put a proportion towards highway management measures, and that's roughly the balance that we set out in the resources and priorities report at the start of the year. And that enables us then to go away and start shaping the programs of work that then come back in detail to these sessions later on in the year. So the whole process started 8 months ago, and that's where we are at the moment. But in terms of benefiting value for money, in these changes in speed limits at the moment, if we were to save just one single serious or fatal accident as a result of reducing these speed limits, the Department of Transport advises that's over about £1.9 million worth of savings. If we were to say that's the value of a serious or injury accident to society, and that's what we want. So it'd be great value of money expending £50,000 on reducing that group of speed limits to create a safer network at the moment. So we think it does offer good value. That's why we're here to propose that before you today. In terms of what you could do instead, that £50,000, you could do another pedestrian crossing facility in the programme. You could bring forward an individual road safety scheme, and again, you saw that priority list of safety schemes. But actually, that £50,000 probably wouldn't fund any of those, because they all actually want a lot more funding than that at the moment. So it's a case of balancing that budget up. When we looked at the available funding, and at this moment in time, we think that £50,000, or we know the £50,000 is available. We've looked at the schemes that are there. We think that they can be all delivered within that £50,000. We've got to look into a bit of the detail, but that's where we're thinking at the moment. But just bear in mind, if we were to save just one all-injury accident, it's a substantial saving on society and the cost-benefit ratio for us. I hope that helps. And Councillor Cole, thank you for your support. Appreciate that. And as you know, Chapel House and the Grace Academy is one of those school sites that's on the list to be considered. So we'll pick that one up for you. And I'm sure you were talking about Cook's Lane as well as the other one in your list of schemes. But I got the message. Thank you for that.
Yes, I thought she was going to mention Cook's Lane as well, because again, it's the dynamics of that road being a very straight road. I'd like to thank Councillor Hodgson for his consideration for Blythe Ward. I actually read. I'd actually thought that it was from Cheswick Way downwards, but you've seen the map doesn't indicate that. And again, something Paul mentioned about having appropriate speed limits. You know, there is nothing worse than having a speed limit for a road. You're going down a road, and maybe a wide road, and the speed limit is inappropriate for it. And so you might it might be a wide dual carriageway, and it maybe should be a 40 or a 30. But if it's, well, so it could be a 40 or a 50, and if it's a 30, I think that it's those type of roads you find that there'll be more evidence of speeding because the driver might not believe that that's the right speed. So having the right speed, for the road and the circumstances and the history that goes with it is absolutely vital. And the Councillor Hodgson did mention Docking Lane, which I've raised. Actually, it's we've agreed it to be remained at 40. I think it's going to be part of the red route. But as ward councillors, when site 12 BL2 comes online, and it is likely to, that's the time to and it's a message there for all ward councillors when there's development to use those developments to see how the existing infrastructure could be enhanced, even by section 106s or payments towards traffic measures, whether it be average speed cameras or other measures. I think that's the time to do that. I think that's appropriate. But for something like this, I did expect maybe some more representations from members, and I think once there's more publicity about this this evening, I suspect there's going to be more representations from the public and councillors as well, and that is a good thing. That is a good thing. We must take public with this now. Do you want to move on to the next bit, Paul?
Thank you, Cabinet Member. So the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, again, very hot topic at the moment. What's going on around the country, and I think Solihull has been accused in the past of actually not doing much on the 20-mile-an-hour front. And actually, when you look at it, we've actually got 177 roads in Solihull that's already covered by 20-mile limits. So we've demonstrated since the 2013 guidance that we've actually followed the Department of Transport advice, and we've looked at and reviewed and implemented 20-mile-an-hour speed limits as we've gone through, and we felt it appropriate. But I think this is the time now to have a look at that next level. And what we're proposing here is a policy that's set out in paragraph, I lost it further down the line, something like 4.24 that looks at the benefits, and a little bit further down and it talks about the three criteria in 5.8. Certainly we're looking at the moment around certainly our school streets projects that come forward. I think we've proven with the 6 that we've introduced at the moment that they complement each other as well, bringing those speed limits down to 20 miles an hour. We're obviously looking at that paper around low traffic neighbourhoods. So I think those schemes will again look to bring forward 20-mile-an-hour schemes. The sheer nature of a low traffic neighbourhood, trying to encourage that low speeds as well, be great. And then where we've got those requests covering retail centres, schools, and locations of high movement of vulnerable road users, be that cyclists or pedestrians. Those are the 3 categories we need to look at. That's why I think you heard me refer to Rowood Drive. There's large sections of Rowood Drive which really wouldn't fit into that policy at this moment in time, but happy, as I said, to take it away. The list in Appendix D just shows you the scale of schools that are involved in it, and we've had a rough estimate of the likely cost, and we think we're talking a budget of around about £120,000 that would be needed. We haven't got that available at the moment, so what we're proposing to do as part of this report is to take this, subject to the policy being approved, to take this away, look at it in far more detail for you, and come through with a programme. And I suspect in the resources and priorities report later in the year, we'll bring back options of how that can be delivered and funded through the portfolio. And it'll probably need to look at in the whole traffic regulation order programme. It'll almost certainly be a phased approach over a number of years, 2 or 3 years, before we could get around all of the locations. But that's the sort of thinking at the moment. Happy to take questions on that element. I think certainly Councillor Hodgson has got something he'd like to raise, and Councillor Thomas.
Okay, thank you. I will ask Catherine to speak first this time. Sorry, but again, thanks for the report. It's and I'll sign up to all the recommendations and comments in there. It is essential. It's not so much about it's 20 miles an hour. It's driver behaviour that has to change, and there is evidence to show, as Tim mentioned, there is evidence in the report. There's evidence to show that somebody might be driving 35 miles an hour down the road might actually reduce their speed limit, the speed down to about 5 or 6 or 7 miles an hour in a 20-mile-an-hour zone, and that can only be good for the overall safety. Councillor Thomas, and then Councillor.
Okay, first one, just a bit of a question relating, or a request relating to 5.8C. Obviously, requests which cover roads fronting retail centres, schools, and locations with high pedestrian movement. Could I clarify whether that would include streets like Moordown Avenue? Now, Moordown Avenue doesn't quite front on a school, but it is the road that absolutely everybody who is going to that school who doesn't live on Windrush Close has to cross. So it has a very high volume of pedestrian movements across it. It's a rat run and it has a speeding problem. So I suppose my question is, can we make sure whatever definition we agree in 5.8C, it covers roads like Moordown Avenue, which do have the high levels of school traffic. The second one is, I think I've probably said in the past, I've struggled a bit with 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, mainly because I lived near one for a long period of time, and I think I've actually got more fingers on my hands than people I actually encountered doing 20 miles an hour through it in the 10 years I lived nearby it. But I think I had a very good conversation with Paul Tovey, and he made a very good point to me around that actually very soon we're going to be getting autonomous connected vehicles, which then would in effect force the adherence to these speed limits. And actually, if we see that as a preparation for those vehicles where the speed limit obedience becomes mandatory, then it makes a lot more sense. Because I was really, really worried how these limits were going to be enforced, and how we were going to make sure they're effective and actually deliver the benefit, rather than them just being some nice science that people ignore. Because without them actually making the change, then I think it's difficult. But with that coming in, I can certainly see the benefits of these. I think, but my question in the meantime is how are we going to enforce these? The report does say that adherence to them is poor. Yes, there might be a small slowing down, but actually most residents living near them don't really notice the difference before or after they've gone in. So how are we going to make them so they're actually effective before a large number of people have these vehicles that do regulate the speeds to the legal limits?
Okay, Tim, do you want to comment now?
Oh, yes, please. And fairly brief comments from me, as I've already commented really about the merits of 20-mile-an-hour limits. But just to say, I think that the list in front of us in terms of Appendix D, I appreciate we'd get another report back on this around February next year. Really pleased to see such an extensive list there of schools throughout the borough. Just one comment on reference 4 on Appendix D, which is Velsheda Road, Berman Infant School. We'd need to do Middleton Road as well if we were going to do Velsheda, because it's another way in to that school. So you've got the 2 roads coming in. So just wanted to make that point. But yes, I think in terms of the rollout of all of these limits, I think we need to accompany it with a really strong publicity campaign as well and get the public on board. I think that's really important. Thanks.
Thank you. David, did you want to make a comment?
No, Cabinet Member. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think you've already mentioned that you have several in your area as well. And again, it's just picking up something. It's important how we explain this to the residents as well, because there will be people who won't agree with what's being looked at. There are only proposals at this stage, but to be fair, most of these proposals are ones that I would support, and I sense there'll be widespread support as well. And we're not just looking at 20-mile-an-hour limits for the sake of it. Everything has to be measured and appropriate, and we've got to take the people with us in doing this. Paul, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Yes, just picking up the points raised by Councillor Thomas in terms of Moordown Avenue. It is the type of street, as I think I set out in the beginning, around schools. We're not prescriptive in that Appendix D at the moment. That's just the location. In terms of the detail, we will come back and look at those. Certainly Moordown Avenue fits the criteria because it has a high number of pedestrians crossing it at school time. As you quite rightly point out, the school streets has moved that boundary for the school that little bit further away, and it would certainly be in our thinking when we get down to the detail, that type of street. Pleased with your comment that you found and valued the conversation we had earlier, and I think we are looking at a network. It's not just isolated changes, and I think when you bring forward a policy change like this, Cabinet Member, we will see more 20-mile-hours out there. That will in its own raise awareness of 20-mile-hour speeds to more motorists. It certainly expose more people to 20-mile limits, and if we can get that publicity that Councillor Hodgson talked about out there, to get those people that maybe 60% of people already comply with speed limits, if we can get those people driving at 20, the people that have to follow them then have to drive at 20 as well. So it's bringing everybody together, because we don't do it on it. But what we don't want to do is place a burden on the police force that then find themselves chasing around trying to enforce unenforceable speed limits or unrealistic speed limits as far as they're concerned, because they haven't got the resources. We need to recognise that, and that's why we're looking to bring in locations that are effective and understood by the motorist, while we actually reducing them to 20 or 30 as the case may be. But I think I mentioned previously, we do have to involve the Chief Constable at next stage of detailed consultation when we go out to those changes, and I'm sure he'll have an input into that. Likewise for Councillor Hodgson, Velsheda and Middleton, they go hand in hand. Where the extent of the 20-mile-hour speed limit will be, again, we'll pick it up in that detailed level. And appreciate Councillor Cole's support by what you said previously.
Yeah, thank you. it is. You mentioned about enforcement, and even the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit is pretty well self-enforced, and it's not it's not a secret either that certainly in the police realms that it's not like some of the static cameras or the mobile cameras where you might get 40 for traveling 4 to 5 miles an hour above the speed limit. But I remember back in my day, we probably wouldn't report somebody who's doing, unless they're doing 10 miles above the speed limit. Now that is, even though the negative side of that is that you're allowing somebody to do 40 and 30 or 50 and 40. But the fact is, there are more cars on the roads now, and even though the accident rate has gone down dramatically, we've still got to drive it down even further to ensure our neighbourhoods are safe. So in that respect, unless there's any other comments, I'll okay, Catherine.
Pick up on that comment about 30s being self-enforcing. That's really not what we're seeing in London. We clocked someone the other day doing 72 miles an hour down Pierce Avenue. We've had sort of 60 plus on Ullery's Road and Pierce before. And there's a lot, certainly in Linden, and it might be because there's long straight roads that people don't like parking their cars on because they get hit by speeding cars. They're certainly not self-enforcing, and I don't really know how until we get these vehicles with the speed limits where they mandatory adhere to the speed limits, how we're going to change that really, unless we can get some more enforcement from the police out there to try and encourage drivers to think about what they're doing and change their behaviour.
Yeah, I'll take your point, and I know that it's various times when I've had data from when I've asked the data on various roads at various times. You get the odd vehicle travelling very, very high speed, but the vast majority, I think we find the 85% percentile of vehicles do travel within a certain tolerance of. But it is that one idiot who, and to be fair, it doesn't matter whether it's a 20 mile an hour or a 40 mile an hour zone. There's always this one idiot who's going to put people's lives at risk. That is an unfortunate fact of life. That is, and I agree we should have some more enforcement. My personal view is that I'd love the local authority to have the facilities to be able to enforce speeding, but that's got to come from legislation from central government. I don't think you need to be a police officer to stand at the road with a laser speed gun. You don't need to go through all that level of training. That's my personal view. But so I'll move on to the recommendations now, and I do thank the members for their input, and I think there's going to be more to come. I suppose there'll be more to come because as news of this meeting is made more widely, and certainly with members as well. I expect officers to be members and officers to be inundated my street as well, and that can only be good to get more and more people engaged in this process. So I'll go on to page 5 and the paragraph 2 of the decisions recommended. I'm asked to note the findings of the review and to prove the progression and advertisement of a traffic regulation order to amend the speed limits on roads listed in Appendix B and shown in Appendix C. And in the event of objections being received, that these be considered through the approved schemes of delegation by a head of highways management. And B, to consider and approve the proposed new guiding principles for the use of future rollout of 20 mile an hour speed restrictions as set out in sections 5.9 and 5.11 of this report. I think my throat's just going to last. And C, to note the intention to carry out a further review of speed limits operating at school sites identified in Appendix D and to agree to receive a further report in February 2022 on progress and funding opportunities to bring this programme of work forward in future years. And I think that's it for this evening. and I thank everybody for their time and commitment this evening. Thank you, and thank you for Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Clements as well for taking the time to make representations as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Member and the officers. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll close the meeting.